They followed every rule. They trusted the guides. They believed the danger was under control. But in the African safari, lions don't attack because of chaos. They attack because of
They are
one
right behind
silent
us.
mistake humans keep repeating. These are not legends. These are real safari lion attacks, reconstructed from documented incidents. Names have been changed. The consequences have not. Stay until the end, because the final story explains why experienced people die first. Story 1. The Silence Before the Charge. Safari Lion Attack. The African savannah was quiet in a way that felt unnatural. Not peaceful, not calm, but empty, as if sound itself had stepped back to make room for something else. The grass stretched endlessly in muted gold tones, broken only by scattered acacia trees and the slow movement of heat waves rising from the earth. It was late afternoon, the most deceptive hour on safari, when exhaustion dulls attention and confidence replaces caution. The safari vehicle had stopped near a shallow, dry riverbed. The guide explained that lions had been spotted in the area earlier that morning, resting after a night hunt. To the untrained eye, the landscape looked harmless. No movement, no sound, no visible danger. Just wind brushing against tall grass. This was the first mistake. Stepping out of the vehicle was not unusual. Tourists did it often during short breaks, trusting the guide's experience and the illusion of control. The ground felt firm beneath the boots, the air dry and heavy. A camera was lifted, lenses adjusted, eyes scanning the horizon for something worth capturing. No one noticed how the grass to the left bent slightly against the wind, moving differently than the rest. Lions do not announce themselves. Unlike predators that rely on speed or chaos, lions rely on patience and silence. They observe. They measure distance. They wait for posture, for distraction, for the precise moment when attention drifts. Somewhere beyond the tall grass, a lioness lay flat against the earth, muscles relaxed, eyes fixed. She had already chosen her target. The human mind is not designed to process danger that does not move. That is why the second mistake went unnoticed. The lioness was not alone. A male lion rested farther back, partially concealed by brush, his presence almost ceremonial. He would not need to attack. His role was pressure, intimidation, a final wall if escape was attempted. The hunt was already unfolding, slow and methodical, invisible to those standing just meters away. A step forward brought the human closer to the riverbed. Dry cracks split the ground like veins. The camera clicked. The sound was sharp, unnatural, and final. That was when the grass shifted. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just enough. The lioness rose halfway, body low, shoulders rolling forward in complete control. Her eyes locked onto movement, not fear, not sound, but imbalance. The human froze, confused, mind struggling to connect the image forming ahead with the idea of danger. Predators recognize hesitation. The third mistake was stillness. Running might have triggered pursuit, but standing still confirmed vulnerability. The lioness closed the distance with terrifying efficiency. No roar, no warning. Just a burst of muscle and intent that shattered the illusion of safety in less than a second. Impact came low. The force knocked the human backward into the dry riverbed, breath torn from the lungs. Dust filled the air. The lioness's weight pinned the torso as claws found grip in fabric and skin. Pain arrived late, delayed by shock, replaced first by pressure and disbelief. The guide shouted. The vehicle engine roared to life, but lions do not release easily once contact is made. The male lion stepped forward now, not to attack but to block interference. His presence alone was enough to stop any immediate rescue attempt. A lion's stare is not rage, it is calculation. He watched, assessing whether the kill was necessary. The lioness adjusted her grip. This was the unavoidable mistake's consequence. Stepping out, trusting stillness, ignoring the invisible. Teeth closed around the shoulder, not to kill but to control. Lions often subdue before finishing. The human screamed, a raw sound that finally broke the silence that had existed minutes before. Blood darkened the dust, spreading quickly, unmistakably real. The vehicle advanced slowly, horn blaring, engine screaming in defiance. This disruption finally shifted the balance. The lioness hesitated, head lifting, eyes tracking the metal shape approaching her territory. She released her grip and backed away, not retreating, not fleeing, just reassessing. Within seconds, both lions vanished into the grass as if they had never been there. The rescue came too late to undo the damage. Bones were fractured, flesh torn. Shock set in quickly. Survival was no longer about escape, but endurance. Medical evacuation would take time, and time was bleeding out onto the savannah floor. Later analysis would focus on protocol violations, decision-making errors, and environmental factors. Reports would describe the incident clinically, stripping it of fear and disbelief. But the truth remained simple and brutal. The savannah does not forgive mistakes. Lions do not attack out of malice. They attack when opportunity presents itself, when human behavior aligns perfectly with predatory instinct. Silence, confidence, and stillness created the perfect conditions. The attack was not sudden, it was inevitable. Story 2. When the engine stops. Safari lion attack. The sun was already dropping toward the horizon when the vehicle slowed. Shadows stretched longer across the savannah, turning familiar shapes into distorted silhouettes. This was the hour when predators woke and prey made mistakes. The air cooled just enough to bring relief, but with it came movement, unseen and unannounced. The safari truck had been running for hours. Dust coated everything, lungs included. Fatigue had settled into the body, dulling instinct and sharpening impatience. The guide decided to stop briefly near a cluster of acacia trees, a place lions were known to pass through at dusk. The engine idled, humming low, a thin barrier between metal and flesh. Then the engine cut out. Silence returned instantly, thick and absolute. The sudden absence of sound made every breath feel loud, every movement exaggerated. Attempts to restart failed. The ignition clicked uselessly again and again, each attempt more desperate than the last. This was the first error of the evening. Vehicles on safari are not just transportation, they are protection. Lions recognize them as obstacles, not threats. When the engine dies, the illusion collapses. Metal becomes just another shape in the landscape. The passengers stayed seated, eyes scanning the perimeter. Tall grass surrounded the clearing, dense and uneven. Visibility was limited. The guide stepped down to inspect the engine compartment, believing the risk minimal. After all, lions usually announce themselves. That belief was wrong. Lions hunt during this hour because vision fades unevenly. Humans struggle first. Lions do not. From the grass line, a young male lion watched the vehicle. His mane was not fully developed, his confidence still forming, but hunger had sharpened his focus. He was not alone. 2 lionesses rested nearby, barely visible, their bodies blending perfectly into shadow and earth. The guide leaned over the open hood. His back was turned to the grass. This was the second mistake. Lions assess posture. Bending forward exposes the neck and spine. It signals vulnerability. The lioness closest to the vehicle lowered her body, muscles tightening as she calculated distance. No rush, no sound. The hunt had begun. Inside the truck, tension rose. Someone shifted in their seat. Another raised a camera instinctively, then lowered it again, sensing something was wrong but unable to name it. The air felt heavier now, charged with anticipation. The guide straightened slightly, wiping sweat from his face. The engine was dead. He turned halfway toward the passengers, ready to speak. Movement exploded from the grass. The lioness launched herself forward, closing the gap in seconds. Her target was not the guide's face or chest, but his lower back. Impact came with bone-jarring force, knocking him to the ground before the brain could register what was happening. Dust erupted. The lioness clamped down, teeth finding muscle and fabric. The sound was not a roar, but a deep, guttural vibration, a signal to the others. The young male advanced immediately. The passengers screamed. The noise shattered the savannah's calm, but it did not stop the attack. Lions are not startled by chaos once commitment is made. They feed through it. The male circled the vehicle, eyes locked on the movement inside. He leaped onto the side panel, claws scraping metal, testing boundaries. The truck rocked violently. Panic spread. This was the third mistake. One passenger reached for the door handle. Opening a safari vehicle during an active lion encounter is fatal. The door cracked open just inches before another passenger slammed it shut, saving a life without realizing it. The male lion dropped back to the ground, frustrated but focused. His presence alone pinned everyone inside, frozen. Outside, the guide struggled weakly. Blood darkened the soil beneath him. The lioness maintained control, adjusting her grip, her body positioned to shield the kill from interference. Minutes passed like hours. Eventually, another vehicle approached from the distance, engine roaring loudly, intentionally aggressive. The sound carried across the savannah, cutting through instinct and hunger. The lioness hesitated, lifting her head. The male backed away first, unwilling to challenge a larger disturbance. Reluctantly, the lioness released and retreated into the grass, dragging nothing with her. The attack was over, but the damage was permanent. The guide lay motionless. Emergency response arrived too late to reverse the outcome. The official report would later describe the incident as a mechanical failure followed by unexpected wildlife interaction. But nothing about it was unexpected. Engines fail. Lions wait. The savannah does not care about schedules, experience, or confidence. It only responds to opportunity. The moment the engine stopped, the balance shifted. Metal lost its authority. Humans became part of the food chain again. That night, the grass swallowed all evidence of the attack. By morning, nothing remained but tire tracks and silence. The lions moved on. Story 3. The camp that should have never been built. The camp was set up too close to the river. At first, it seemed like a perfect location. Water nearby, open ground, clear visibility during the day. What the maps didn't show was how the land changed after sunset. Paths appeared that were invisible in daylight. Trails carved not by feet, but by generations of predators moving silently between feeding grounds. Lions used the river at night. The tents were placed in a loose circle, canvas walls stretched tight. poles anchored shallow into dry soil. There were no solid barriers, only thin fabric and confidence. The fire pit sat in the center, built more for comfort than defense. Flames were meant to keep wildlife away. That assumption had already killed people before. Night came quickly, the sky darkened, stars sharpening overhead as the savannah cooled. Sounds shifted. Insects grew louder, birds went silent. Somewhere beyond the tree line, something large moved slowly through grass. No one noticed. Fatigue dulled awareness. The long drive, the heat, the excitement of the day pressed everyone toward rest. One by one, lights went out. Zippers closed. The camp settled into shallow sleep. This was the first mistake. Sleeping in lion territory without a perimeter watch invites disaster. Lions patrol at night. They test boundaries, often gently at first. A young lioness approached from downwind. She moved low, body nearly brushing the ground. The scent of humans was strong here, unfamiliar but intriguing. She stopped at the edge of the fire pit, observing the shapes of the tents. The smell of food clung to the air, remnants of dinner not fully cleaned. The second mistake: food smells draw curiosity. Curiosity turns into assessment. The lioness circled once, twice, no reaction, no warning lights, no raised voices. The camp appeared dead. She nudged the side of a tent with her nose. Inside, a man stirred. Sleep confusion delayed reaction. The shape pressing into the canvas did not register as danger immediately. He shifted his weight, assuming it was wind. The fabric pressed again, harder this time. Claws grazed the surface, slicing lightly but not tearing through. Instinct finally screamed. He sat up. The movement triggered the lioness. The tent wall exploded inward as she lunged, tearing through fabric with practiced ease. The sound ripped through the camp like gunfire. Screams followed instantly, chaotic and overlapping. This was the third mistake: panic. Running from a tent during a lion encounter exposes the body completely. The man burst out the opposite side, barefoot, disoriented, eyes adjusting too slowly to darkness. He took 3 steps before the lioness was on him. She struck low, knocking him off balance. He hit the ground hard, breath driven from his lungs. Dust and grass filled his mouth. The lioness clamped onto his shoulder, dragging him away from the tents, instinctively isolating the prey. More lions appeared. A large male emerged from the darkness, drawn by sound and scent. He did not rush. He walked, controlled and dominant, his presence alone paralyzing the rest of the camp. Anyone who stepped forward froze instantly under his gaze. The fire flickered uselessly. One person grabbed a flashlight and shined it wildly into the darkness. The beam caught the male lion's face for a split second, eyes reflecting light like polished metal. He did not retreat. Light does not scare a committed predator. The lioness adjusted her grip. The man struggled weakly, but the strength difference was absolute. Every movement wasted energy. Every breath came shorter than the last. This was the fourth mistake: no emergency protocol. There were no vehicles running, no flares prepared, no clear chain of command. The camp dissolved into helpless observation. The male lion moved closer, asserting ownership. He circled once, then stepped in. The attack intensified, efficient and final. The sound stopped abruptly. Eventually, the lions dragged the body toward the river, disappearing into darkness as if they had never been there. Dawn revealed the aftermath. Shredded canvas, blood-stained soil, drag marks leading into tall grass, fading as they approached water. The camp stood intact, but something fundamental had been stripped away. Investigators later concluded that the location was within known lion movement corridors. The decision to camp there was logged as a judgment error. But the savannah does not judge. It simply reacts. The lions returned to the river that night following the same paths their ancestors had walked for centuries. The land remembered them. The tents were temporary. The mistake was human. Story 4. One step above the seat. The vehicle was never meant to be stood in. Safari trucks are designed with strict rules that exist for one reason. Lions calculate height, posture, and threat in seconds. A seated human blends into the shape of the vehicle. A standing human becomes something else entirely. The group had been tracking the pride since early morning. Fresh paw prints crossed the dirt road repeatedly, wide and deep, still sharp at the edges. The guide slowed the engine, scanning the tall grass ahead. Vultures circled far off, not yet descending, a sign that something had fed recently. The lions were close. The truck stopped near a shallow rise. From this angle, visibility was excellent. Golden grass rippled gently in the wind. At first, nothing moved. Then a head lifted. Then another. A full pride lay scattered in the shade, barely visible unless you knew exactly what to look for. Cameras came up instantly. This was the first mistake. The excitement drowned out caution. Everyone leaned outward, shifting weight, blocking the guide's line of sight. The vehicle rocked slightly under uneven movement. One man stood. He wanted a better angle. He placed one foot on the seat, rising slowly, careful not to shake the truck too much. In his mind, this was harmless. He had seen others do it online. Thousands of videos showed tourists standing briefly for photos without consequences. What those videos didn't show were the hundreds of times it ended badly. The lions noticed immediately. A lioness raised her head higher, ears turning forward, her body tensed. The vertical shape disrupted the familiar outline of the truck. Something tall had emerged from it, something exposed. Predators are triggered by posture. Standing equals vulnerability. The guide reacted late. His hand shot up, mouth opening to shout, but the sound never came. The lioness had already locked in. She moved fast. Grass parted violently as she closed the distance in seconds, body low, tail stiff. The engine roared as the guide slammed the accelerator, but momentum works against heavy vehicles. The lioness leapt. Her claws scraped metal as she slammed into the side of the truck, jaws snapping inches from the man's leg. The impact threw him off balance. He fell backward into the vehicle, camera flying from his hands. The second mistake. Instead of staying down, he tried to get up. Panic overrides logic. He scrambled, half standing again, exposing himself a second time. The lioness regrouped instantly, circling the vehicle with practiced precision. Another lion joined her. This one was larger, scarred across the muzzle. He approached from the blind side, muscles rippling beneath his coat. He rose on his hind legs, placing his front paws on the vehicle's frame. Metal bent. The man screamed as claws tore through his calf. Blood sprayed across the interior. The guide finally shouted, commanding everyone to sit and stay down. The engine screamed as the vehicle lurched forward, tires spinning. The lion lost his grip, but the damage was done. The man collapsed onto the floor, shock setting in rapidly. Blood pooled beneath him, soaking into the dust. The lions followed for several meters before slowing, unwilling to chase a moving machine for long. Silence returned too quickly. The drive to the ranger station felt endless. No one spoke. The man's breathing grew shallow. Every bump in the road sent fresh pain through his body. The guide kept one eye on the mirrors, expecting the pride to reappear at any moment. They didn't. At the station, medics worked fast. The injuries were severe but survivable. Deep puncture wounds, torn muscle, crushed bone. The official report stated, "Tourist violated safety protocol by standing in vehicle." That sentence carried no emotion. The lions were not relocated. They had acted within instinct, responding to an exposed target in their territory. The man never returned to safari. He later admitted that the photo wasn't worth it. That the moment he stood, something in the lion's behavior changed instantly, like a switch flipping. The savannah had given a warning. It almost didn't give a second chance. Story 5. The 5-minute stop. The decision was framed as harmless. Just 5 minutes, just a stretch. Just enough time to fix a minor issue before continuing. That was how the guide explained it. The safari vehicle had been running for hours through rough terrain. Dust coated everything. The engine temperature had begun to climb. When the warning light flickered on, the guide slowed and pulled the truck beneath the sparse shade of an acacia tree. He had done this before. Hundreds of times. The area looked quiet, no visible movement, no immediate signs of lions nearby, no fresh kills, no circling vultures. The savannah stretched wide and still deceptively calm. The guide shut off the engine. That was the first irreversible mistake. In predator territory, sound is protection. A running engine signals dominance, size, threat. Silence turns a vehicle into nothing more than a stationary object. The group stayed seated as the guide stepped out, lifting the hood. Heat rolled upward in waves. He muttered to himself, checking hoses, wiping sweat from his forehead. 5 minutes, he had said. One of the tourists followed him out. She claimed she needed air. The guide told her to stay close to the vehicle, not to wander, not to stand upright for too long. His voice was calm, practiced, but distracted. She nodded and stepped a few meters away. That distance mattered. Lions often remain invisible until they choose not to be. Tall grass hides muscle, hides intent, hides death until the final seconds. The pride had been resting nearby, unseen, watching the vehicle arrive, listening to the engine fade into silence. They waited. The woman stretched, arms above her head, turning slowly as she looked across the open land. She smiled. It felt peaceful, safe. The grass behind her shifted. At first it looked like wind. Then a shape separated itself from the earth. A male lion rose silently, mane blending into shadow and dust. He had been lying flat, less than 20 meters away, his body aligned perfectly with the terrain. He had not moved when the vehicle arrived. He had not moved when the engine shut off. He had not moved when the guide stepped out. He moved when prey stood exposed. The guide saw it a fraction of a second too late. His shout tore through the air, sharp and desperate. The woman turned, confusion flickering across her face just as the lion launched. There was no chase, only impact. The force knocked her to the ground instantly. The lion's jaws closed around her shoulder, crushing bone. She screamed once before the sound was cut short. Dust exploded around them as the lion dragged her backward toward the grass. The guide ran, not away, toward them. It was instinct, not logic. He grabbed a flare from the vehicle, striking it with shaking hands. The sudden burst of light and sound startled the lion just enough to make him release and retreat several meters. Not far. Never far. The guide dragged the woman back, her body limp, blood soaking into the soil. He fired the flare again, waving it wildly, shouting, making himself as large as possible. The lion stopped. He watched. Lions do not abandon prey easily. He stood there, tail twitching, calculating. The guide kept the flare between them, backing toward the vehicle inch by inch. The tourists inside were frozen, unable to move, unable to help. Finally, the lion stepped back into the grass, not defeated, just waiting. The engine roared to life. Seconds later, the vehicle lurched forward, tearing away from the scene. No one looked back. The woman survived, barely. She lost the use of her arm. Scars covered her upper body. The psychological damage never healed. She later said that what haunted her most wasn't the attack itself, but how silent it was. No warning roar, no dramatic buildup, just grass parting and then pain. The official report stated that stopping the vehicle outside designated areas violated protocol. 5 minutes. That was all it took. Story 6. When the lights failed, night safaris were marketed as rare privileges. A chance to see what most tourists never would. Predators moving freely. Glowing eyes in the dark. The raw, unfiltered reality of the African wilderness after sunset. The guide leading this trip had done hundreds of night drives. He knew the rules. He respected the animals. He trusted his equipment. That trust would become the problem. The vehicle rolled slowly across the savannah, headlights off, red-filtered spotlights sweeping the grass. Red light was less disruptive to animals, allowing observation without provoking aggression. The group was quiet. The night air was cool. Insects hummed. Somewhere far away, a lion called, low and distant. The guide slowed. Fresh tracks crossed the dirt path. Large, male, recent. He stopped the vehicle. That was mistake number 1. At night, stopping removes unpredictability. Movement keeps predators cautious. Stillness invites evaluation. The guide scanned the area, nothing visible. The grass moved slightly, but that was common. Wind, rodents, nothing more. Then the spotlight flickered, once, twice, then went out. The darkness felt immediate and complete. Without the light, depth disappeared. Distance vanished. The savannah collapsed into a flat, black void. The guide cursed under his breath and reached down to adjust the wiring. He kept one hand on the steering wheel, ready to move if necessary. He didn't realize how quickly lions adapt to darkness. 2 lions had been following the vehicle, not chasing, stalking. They had learned the rhythm of night safaris, learned that vehicles slowed, stopped, lingered, learned that light meant awareness and darkness meant opportunity. When the spotlight died, the lions moved, silently. The first sign wasn't sound, it was breath. One of the tourists smelled it before seeing anything. A heavy, warm odor, thick and animal, drifting through the open side of the vehicle. Then eyes appeared, amber reflections at ground level, too close, not startled, not surprised, focused. The guide slammed the ignition. Nothing. The engine sputtered but didn't turn over. The second lion emerged from the opposite side, cutting off retreat. They worked together, spacing themselves perfectly, closing angles, assessing weaknesses. This wasn't hunger. This was testing. The tourists screamed. The guide shouted for silence, for everyone to stay seated, to keep arms inside. His voice shook, not with fear, but with urgency. The lions circled. One brushed against the side of the vehicle, muscles scraping metal. The sound was unmistakable, heavy, controlled. Then the first lion jumped. He didn't leap inside. He landed on the hood, claws sinking into metal, weight collapsing the frame slightly. His head rose above the windshield, mane framing his face as he stared directly into the vehicle. Eye contact. A dominance challenge. The guide revved the engine again. This time it caught. The sudden noise startled the lion just enough for him to drop back down, but not retreat. The second lion roared, deep and explosive, vibrating through bone and chest. The guide slammed the accelerator. The vehicle surged forward, bouncing violently across uneven ground. The lions gave chase for several seconds, keeping pace effortlessly before slowing and stopping, silhouettes fading back into darkness. The drive back to camp was silent. No one spoke, no one laughed. Later analysis showed the spotlight failure was caused by a loose connection. A minor issue, something that could have been fixed earlier during daylight. The guide resigned within weeks. He said the worst part wasn't how close they came to dying. It was realizing how intelligently the lions had responded to the failure. They hadn't panicked. They hadn't rushed. They had waited for darkness. Story 7. The fence that meant nothing. The fence was never meant to stop lions. Everyone involved knew that. It was designed to guide movement, not prevent it. A symbolic boundary reinforced by routine patrols, ranger presence, and the assumption that wild animals preferred open land over enclosed human spaces. Assumptions were the most dangerous part of safari tourism. This incident happened near a private reserve bordering a national park, where luxury lodges marketed open nature immersion. Guests slept in tents, not rooms. Canvas walls, wooden floors, a thin illusion of separation between people and predators. The guide giving the orientation speech was calm and confident. He had delivered the same instructions hundreds of times. Do not walk alone at night. Do not step beyond the fence. If you hear movement, stay inside. Lions avoid humans. That last sentence was the lie. Lions avoid unpredictability, not humans. The man involved in this attack had arrived late. He missed the full briefing. He heard fragments. Enough to feel safe, not enough to understand risk. That evening after dinner, he stepped outside his tent. He wasn't reckless, he wasn't drunk, he wasn't trying to be brave. He just needed air. The night was quiet, too quiet, no insects, no distant calls. That silence should have been a warning. The fence was 10 meters away, thin wire barely visible in the dark. He stayed well within the boundary, breathing slowly, listening. That's when he heard footsteps, not heavy, not rushed, measured. He assumed it was a ranger, maybe another guest. He whispered a greeting. Nothing answered. The footsteps stopped, then started again, closer. He turned on his phone flashlight, sweeping it across the ground. The beam caught dust, grass, shadows, but nothing solid. Then the light caught fur. A lioness stood just beyond the fence. Her body was low, shoulders rolled forward, tail stiff. She wasn't startled by the light. She didn't retreat. She studied him. The fence between them hummed faintly in the night breeze. It meant nothing. He froze. Running would trigger pursuit. Standing still invited evaluation. He remembered part of the briefing, make yourself look bigger. But his voice wouldn't work, his arms wouldn't lift. The lioness stepped forward, the wire sagged under her weight, then snapped. The sound was sharp and final. She didn't roar. She lunged. The force knocked him backward into the sand. He screamed as claws tore into his shoulder, dragging him away from the tent, away from the light. Other guests heard the noise seconds later. Shouting erupted. Flashlights flared. A ranger fired a warning shot into the air. The lioness released him instantly and vanished into darkness exactly as she had come. He survived. Barely. Deep puncture wounds. Torn muscle. Infection. Months of recovery. The investigation focused on the fence, why it failed, why it wasn't reinforced, why guests were allowed that close. But the truth was simpler. The fence wasn't broken. It was never real to begin with. The man later said the most terrifying moment wasn't the attack. It was the eye contact. The lioness hadn't been confused. She hadn't mistaken him for prey. She had made a decision. Story 8. The Last Rule. Everyone breaks. Every safari has rules. Some are written on paper, some are spoken aloud. One is never said directly, but everyone understands it. Never assume the lion is gone just because you can't see it. This final incident took place during a guided walking safari in East Africa, in a conservation zone marketed as low risk due to long-term monitoring of lion prides. The guides were experienced. The terrain was familiar. The route had been walked dozens of times without incident. That history bred confidence. Confidence became routine. Routine became carelessness. The group consisted of 6 tourists and 2 guides. The lead guide carried a rifle. The second guide watched the rear. They moved slowly through tall grass, stopping often to point out tracks, scat, broken branches. Everything was educational, calm, controlled. Earlier that morning they had seen lion tracks crossing the path. Fresh, less than an hour old. The lead guide acknowledged them, studied the direction, and decided to continue. Lions move constantly. Tracks alone mean nothing. That was the logic. The man who would be attacked walked third in line. He was attentive, quiet, respectful. He followed every instruction. When told to stop, he stopped. When told to crouch, he crouched. He trusted the system. The grass grew thicker as they approached a shallow, dry riverbed. Visibility dropped. Sounds changed. The wind shifted. The rear guide slowed, scanning left and right. He saw nothing. They descended into the riverbed. That was the mistake. Lions use riverbeds as highways, cool ground, cover, natural funnels for prey. The first sign was a low, vibrating growl. Not loud, not aggressive. A warning sound. The lead guide raised his hand. Everyone froze. The growl came again, closer this time, from the grass ahead. The guide lifted his rifle but did not fire. Firing blindly could provoke a charge. Seconds passed, then the grass exploded. A male lion burst forward at full speed. Mane flared, jaws open, eyes locked on movement. The group scattered instinctively despite training. The lion didn't chase the guides. He chose the man who turned half a second too late. The impact knocked him flat. The lion clamped down on his upper thigh, crushing muscle, bone, and nerve in a single bite. The man screamed once. The guides reacted instantly, shouting, running forward. The lead guide fired into the ground near the lion's front paws. The lion released and backed away, roaring in frustration before disappearing into the grass. The entire attack lasted less than 5 seconds. The aftermath lasted forever. The man lost massive amounts of blood before evacuation. He survived, but his leg never fully recovered. He would never walk normally again. Investigators reviewed every detail. The route was approved. The guides were certified. The rifle functioned properly. The rules were followed, mostly. Except one. They assumed familiarity meant safety. They assumed knowledge reduced risk. They assumed that because lions had tolerated humans before, they would continue to do so. Lions do not operate on memory or reputation. They operate on opportunity. Later, one of the guides admitted something he had never said publicly before. He had sensed something was wrong before entering the riverbed. A feeling, a tightening in his chest. He ignored it, because nothing had ever happened there before. In the wild, that is the last rule everyone breaks.